Before Come Together became dark, slow, and hypnotic, it was something else entirely. John Lennon originally wrote the song as a fast, almost playful track. The rhythm bounced. The phrasing leaned heavily into early rock and roll. It wasn't sinister or mysterious. It was loose, upbeat, and dangerously familiar. Too familiar. The song pulled heavily from Chuck Berry's You Can't Catch Me, especially in the melodic phrasing and rhythmic feel. Inside the studio, no one needed to say it out loud. Everyone heard the resemblance immediately, and that made the room tense. The faster tempo created another problem. Lennon's lyrics were intentionally strange, filled with fragmented images and wordplay that didn't fully resolve. At high speed, those words blurred together. Instead of intrigue, the result felt sloppy. Instead of mystery, it sounded unfinished. This wasn't uncommon for the Beatles at this stage. By 1969, the band was fractured. Creative disagreements simmered constantly. Songs were no longer polished collectively. They were negotiated into existence. John pushed forward anyway. Early takes felt chaotic. The drums chased the vocals. The guitars filled every available space. There was no center, no anchor. It sounded like a demo that refused to become a song. And hovering over everything was the unspoken fear of legal trouble. Borrowing inspiration was one thing, but this was close enough to trigger accusations. That's when Paul McCartney did something unusual. He didn't argue ownership. He didn't criticize the lyrics. He didn't try to rewrite the song. He changed one variable. He slowed it down. That single adjustment didn't just improve the track. It transformed it into something unrecognizable from its original form. And what followed would quietly redefine the entire recording. But slowing it down was only the beginning. Paul McCartney's suggestion wasn't dramatic. There was no confrontation, no declaration, just a simple idea. Let's take it slower. The moment the tempo dropped, the room shifted. Suddenly, the song wasn't chasing itself. Each beat landed with intention. The space between notes became as important as the notes themselves. Paul didn't fill that space randomly. He claimed it. His bass line emerged as the dominant force, looping with a thick, deliberate weight that grounded the entire track. It wasn't flashy. It was controlling. Every instrument now had to obey the groove. John's vocals changed instantly. What once sounded rushed now felt deliberate. The muttering became menacing. The nonsense started to feel intentional. Scale paragraph. The final tempo settled around 84 BPM, nearly 30% slower than early versions. Recording sessions stretched across dozens of takes, with the finished track running 4 minutes and 20 seconds. The song would later reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and anchor the Abbey Road album. Paul didn't take credit. He didn't frame it as a rescue, but functionally, he had rewritten the song without touching the lyrics. This wasn't the first time Paul had done this. Throughout the Beatles' later years, he increasingly acted as an unspoken producer, tightening structures, refining arrangements, and preventing songs from collapsing under their own ambition. In this case, that restraint saved more than the vibe. It saved the band from something far more dangerous, because even slowed down, the legal threat was already moving closer. The accusations didn't come out of nowhere. Chuck Berry's publisher recognized the similarities immediately. The phrasing, the melodic contour, even the lyrical cadence echoed, "You can't catch me." The resemblance was undeniable. If Come Together had remained fast and playful, the case would have been devastating. Slowing it down altered the song's identity just enough to complicate direct comparison. It wasn't a clone anymore. It was something darker, heavier, and harder to pin down legally. Still, accusations surfaced. Eventually, Lennon was forced into a settlement that required him to record songs from Barry's catalog. The outcome was humiliating, expensive, and public. But here's the unsettling part. That settlement could have erased Come Together entirely. Paul's intervention didn't prevent the lawsuit. It softened the blow. It shifted perception. It gave the song plausible distance. And in doing so, it accidentally layered the track with tension that listeners could feel, even if they didn't understand why. That tension fed directly into the song's strange reputation, a reputation that would spiral into something far stranger than legal disputes. Many listeners describe Come Together as unsettling. There's something about the whispering vocals, the slurred delivery, the way the song seems to creep instead of move forward. Over time, rumors grew. Some claimed the lyrics contained coded messages. Others insisted the song carried voodoo influence or ritualistic intent. A few even described a sense of unease they couldn't explain. Here's the grounded explanation. Lennon recorded vocals extremely close to the microphone. Compression exaggerated breath sounds. Tape saturation added grit. Paul's bass emphasized low frequencies that vibrate physically rather than emotionally. Scale paragraph. The bass dominates frequencies between 60 and 120 hertz, while Lennon's vocal presence peaks around 2 to 3 kHz. The track charted in over 7 countries and has remained in continuous rotation for more than 50 years. Technically, everything makes sense. And yet, even knowing that, the song still feels strange, intimate, almost intrusive. That unresolved feeling mirrors what was happening inside the band itself. Because by the time Come Together was finished, the Beatles were barely holding together. By 1969, collaboration had become fragile. Paul was increasingly viewed as controlling. John was disengaging. George felt overshadowed. Ringo felt peripheral. So when Paul reshaped Come Together, it wasn't just musical. It was political. He asserted control without claiming authority. He stabilized chaos without calling attention to it. That kind of leadership is effective and deeply resented. Yet no one challenged it. Why? Because the result worked. The song locked in. The album progressed. The band moved forward, temporarily. And once it was released, the public story solidified quickly. John was the genius. Paul was the basis. That narrative would never fully be corrected. Strip away everything else, and the bass line remains. It doesn't decorate the song, it dictates it. Paul plays with restraint, leaving space where chaos once lived. Each note feels deliberate, almost confrontational. The bass doesn't follow the drums. The drums follow the bass. Over 70% of the song's rhythmic identity is driven by bass movement. The track has sold over 5 million copies and surpassed 1 billion combined streams globally. Without that foundation, the song collapses. Yet, history rarely frames it that way. Which brings us to the final contradiction. In later interviews, Lennon embraced the mystique of the song. He leaned into its strangeness, its edge. Paul rarely pushed back. Maybe he didn't need to. The public prefers singular genius over quiet intervention. Stories are simpler that way. But simplicity hides truth. And the truth here is uncomfortable. Without Paul slowing the song down, it risked legal erasure. Without his bass, it lacks identity. Without his restraint, it never becomes iconic. Over 50 years of cultural relevance, thousands of cover versions, and continuous chart presence across decades, all stemming from one uncredited decision. So maybe Come Together wasn't saved by inspiration. Maybe it was saved by control. And maybe the real mystery isn't what the song means, but why the person who saved it never claimed it.